Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel, Good Effort Meg. Today we are going to be working on the next iteration of the evolution, and today we are making Umbreon. And just like all of my previous Pokemon videos, I'll leave a link to the pattern down in the description below. This is a free pattern, and be sure to go check it out and download it and follow along with me. With this particular Pokemon, I'm going to get a little creative and just try to show you how I use the materials that I have on hand, so you don't have to go out and buy a bunch of new materials. I also wanted to show an alternative to the needle felting that is listed in the pattern. So if you are not yourself interested in trying needle felting, or you don't necessarily want to invest in that craft supplies at this moment, I am going to show you how to use all of the materials that you already have on hand to create this, to finish it off with very nice details. And without further ado, let's get started. So for list of materials, we're going to need 2 colors of yarn, black and yellow colored yarn. Both of these I just pulled from my stash. We're going to be using a size 3 or delta size crochet hook. You're going to need some scissors, a tapestry needle for sewing at the end, and some stitch markers. You're going to need some safety eyes, and if you're like me and didn't want to go and buy a whole pack of red safety eyes, you're also going to need some red acrylic paint. And with the acrylic paint, I went ahead and just painted 2 of my black safety eyes. I have some bright yellow wool and my tufting needle and kit to come with it. Okay, so we're gonna start with the head of Umbreon. So to do that, we're gonna do a magic ring. So we're gonna put our yarn across our hand like this on the inside at a diagonal, come straight down, make an X on one side, and make parallel lines on the other side of your hand. Then with your crochet hook, you're gonna go under the first line and over the next one, pull it through and twist, just like so. You're gonna pinch it and remove it, and then you're gonna yarn over and pull through 1 loop there, just like that. Then we are going to do 6 single crochets just into this gap right there. So we're gonna insert our hook like that. We're gonna yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. And that's 1 single crochet. So we're going to do that 5 more times. We're then going to put a stitch marker in that last stitch, and then we are going to pull the short end of our yarn to close our piece so far and make a ring. Now, most of this project might be a little difficult to see considering that I'm working with black yarn. So be sure that you have the pattern pulled up from the links provided in the description below so you can follow along, because again, it's going to be kind of difficult to see working with black yarn, but I'll do my best to be helpful. So the next stitch is an increase. So what we're gonna do is an increase. We're just gonna insert into that very first single crochet, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through. So that's just a single crochet. To turn that into an increase, we're just gonna do another single crochet into that very same stitch, just like that. And that's an increase. So go on ahead and do that all the way around, just like that. Now I'm going to pull this small string again, just to try to close up that magic ring a little bit more. If there's still a visible hole, don't worry too much about it. We can always go back in towards the end and we can stitch it closed by threading our needle and sewing across. So now for round 3, you can see the pattern in brackets. It says increase and then single crochet and then close bracket times 6. And anything that's within those square brackets, that just means it's a repeating sequence. So in this case, we are going to do an increase in the first stitch and just 1 single crochet in the next stitch. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. So that's how you read that. So again, an increase is just 2 single crochets into a single stitch, and then we put our single crochet into the next stitch. So that's 1 of the 6 sequences that we're going to do. So just do that all the way around. So now for round 4, you can see there's square brackets, but there's also some information and stitches outside of those square brackets. And all that means is that you're going to perform the stitches that are outside of the square brackets in the order that they're written. So for round 4, you can see we're going to start with a single crochet in our very first stitch, and then we have the square brackets with the sequence listed there. So we're going to perform that sequence 5 times. So we have an increase, and then we have 2 single crochets in the next 2 stitches, and that's one of those sequences. And now we're going to work that until we get all 5 of those. So I just finished that sequence, and now we have 2 stitches that haven't been worked up yet. So if you look at what is written in the pattern, we're going to work an increase in this stitch and a single crochet in that final stitch. And that is how you read the pattern for round 4. So now you have all the tools you need to continue on with this pattern, and I'll come back when we start doing something different. Okay, so I just finished round 13, and before we go any further, we're going to go ahead and put the eyes in. So just so I don't accidentally lose my stitch, I'm just putting a stitch marker just so it doesn't come loose. And I'm going to make this the back of my piece, so I'm going to flip it 180 degrees. And we know that this row right here is 13. And we want to put our eyes between 12 and 11. And we want them to be roughly 7 stitches apart. So we're going to be putting our eyes somewhere in this row. And really you can just pick any spot. So I'm just going to plot one of these right here. And then you want to count 7 stitches. So right about here is where the second eye is gonna go. And there we are. And now I'm going to secure the backs. So now we have the eyes attached. So we're going to continue on with our piece. Now the very first stitch of round 14 is a decrease. Now a standard decrease, you would insert your hook just like you've been doing, and you would yarn over, stick your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, and then pull through 3. But I found that splitting the stitch just like so, and yarning over and pulling through, split the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, and yarn over and pull through all 3. What I have found is that those stitches right there that you didn't grab kind of close this up just a little bit. So that way when you have the stuffing inside, you aren't going to see it as much. And again, I'm going to show you my decrease. So split the first stitch, yarn over, pull through, split the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through all 3 stitches. So now you know how to do pretty much all of the stitches that are in the entirety of this pattern. So I'm gonna go ahead and work this all the way through to the final round, and I'll show you how to finish off this piece. Okay, so I just finished round 16, so we're ready to fasten off. So to do that, we're just gonna pull a bit of length of yarn like so, snip it off, and then all you have to do, and we can take the stitch marker out as well, all you have to do is then just pull that tail of yarn all the way through. So now it won't come undone, and we have finished Umbreon's head. And like you may have seen in my other videos, I prefer to stuff the pieces and parts at the end, and that just makes it easier for me so my needle doesn't get caught in the stuffing and whatnot. But yeah, there's all right. So now we're gonna start on the body. Now the rest of these pieces, I have already talked you through kind of all the building blocks on how to complete this pattern. So instead of going through each piece individually, I'm just going to move forward, and I will see y'all. There is a color change later on in the pattern. So just keep reading through the pattern and going through everything that we talked about already, and I will see y'all when we get to the ears. Here is the body all complete. Here are our legs, and here are the 2 arms, and now we're on to the ears. Okay, so now we're gonna start on the ears, and just like before, you know how to get through the majority of this pattern, so I will pick up and join you guys when we get to round 6. Okay, so I just finished round 5. So for round 6, we're going to do a color change. And to do that, for the first stitch, we are going to insert our hook into the very first stitch of this round. We're gonna grab our yellow yarn, making sure that the end of the yarn is on top. And I'm just going to twist it a few times around the main part of the yellow. And then I'm just going to pull that through. Now, while I'm holding both the black and yellow tail against the body of the piece, I'm just going to yarn over and pull through just like that. Now this very first stitch is an increase, so we're going to insert our hook back into that very same stitch, but this time we want to make sure that the black tail and the yellow tail are going to be captured underneath this stitch. So I'm just making sure it's like on top, just like that, and we'll yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through just like that, and now that's captured underneath that stitch. Now I'm just going to snip the black piece off, and we're going to continue around this round, and we want to make sure that we capture these tails underneath these stitches just like that. So we're just pushing them to the top, and I would say make sure you capture them under, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 stitches, and then after that you're pretty good. And I'm just working around just how I would normally do. I'm actually just going to snip these tails a little bit, not all the way to the end, and then I'm just going to push these to the inside of the piece like so, and then continue on this round. And you don't really need to capture those tails at this point because you don't want them poking out front, but just like that. And that's how I do a colors change. So continue working on, and then in round 8, that's when you'll switch back to the black colored yarn. Okay, so I just finished round 7, and again we're gonna do our color change. So we're gonna put our hook into the very first stitch, gonna grab our colored yarn, put it on the hook with the tail on top, twist it a couple of times, gonna pull it through that stitch, then we're going to yarn over and pull through just like so. Then we're going to push those tails on top, put our hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through. So now we can snip the yellow and keep working around and just making sure we're capturing these tails. And here are both ears all done. So now we just have to do the tail. So I just finished round 13. So we are going to stuff the tail at this point. And here is the tail. And here are all the pieces, all crocheted. So we can begin stuffing and sewing everything together. And we have a few details that we'll create after we finish that. Okay, so very first I am going to start with sewing the ears onto the head. This is just the order of things that I like to do, just based off of mistakes that I've made in the past. So feel free to do this in whatever order you'd like to. But I start with everything unstuffed. So the ears we're not gonna stuff. I just kind of pressed them flat like this. And I've threaded up my needle. And I first start with identifying, so here's our center point right there. And I visually am just kind of splitting it into quadrants. So just finding the center point there and the center line there. And I'm just gonna kind of line it up roughly where I think it would look nice, I think right there. And I'm just going to hold it and hopefully not get all tangled up. And I am just going to anchor it into place. So right about there, I think that'll be fine. Just double checking that I'm happy with that placement. And then I'm gonna go under and through the ear, just like that. Pull that through, and then down and through a stitch in the noggin, just like that. And pull through, and just keep repeating that sequence. So up and through the ear, down and through the noggin, all the way around the ear, and trying to keep where you go through the head kind of underneath the ear as much as possible, so that way you won't really see these stitches at all. And the great thing about stitching on stuff is you can always go back and change it. I know some people who are new to crocheting, this might be one of the more difficult steps. I know it was for me, so much so that actually the first amigurumis that I ever made, I actually hot glued on the pieces together instead of stitching them. And looking back, like, yeah, I got the job done, but it was not pretty. So the more practice you can get, and just, you know, be patient with yourself to learn this, and it'll be well worth it. But again, it took me a very long time to get comfortable with stitching the pieces together for amigurumis. And definitely even since like doing this process on YouTube, I have noticed that I've gotten more confident in my stitching and also faster. So, I mean, definitely with the age-old adage of practice makes better. I wouldn't say I'm perfect at all. All right, so we went all the way around the ear, and I'm pretty happy with that. You can see kind of how it's sitting on the head like that. You might want to put yours up a little bit higher, but I am quite happy with that. To finish off, all we are gonna do is pick up a stitch somewhere. So just like that. And I'm gonna pull it almost all the way through, but we still have this loop. And then I'm gonna come in from the same direction that I went through that stitch, and we're gonna go through that loop, and then we're gonna pull it tight. And then the last step is just to stick your needle through the amigurumi, and we're just pulling it down the center and pulling that little bit, just a little bit. And I'm just pinching where the ear is attached, just so it doesn't invert the ear. I mean, you can undo it, it's not a big deal, but that is how we lock that in. So now we can snip this yarn piece right here. There we are. So that's how we do that. So I am going to put the second ear on now. So here is the head with the ears sewn on. I obviously put this one a little bit too high, but again, it kind of gives that like puppy, like cockeyed kind of look. So again, I'm okay with it, but if you're not happy with it, then just take more time to choose where you put these. And apologize for this, Pennie has decided to make a little nap area on my desk right where I'm filming. So, but next I am going to attach the body and the head. Okay, so to start, we're going to line up these last stitches here where the tail is, and you should have the same number of stitches in this last row on the head as you do as the last row on the body. So you're really just lining up one for one. And I threaded my needle using the tail from the head. And another thing to note is, so you can see the stitches, the V is going this way. So we're going to stitch in this direction, so in a clockwise direction. That's just the way that I like doing it. I just think it gives it a cleaner overall look. But here's this last stitch. So I am just going to tack it in place right in line with this last stitch, or in the first stitch right there. So those kind of like nest together nicely is what we're aiming for, just like that. And also just note, I have not stuffed either the body or the head at this point. I prefer to wait till the last possible moment to do that, just so I don't have to fight with my needle pulling out the stuffing, especially because we're working with black yarn. So we went up, and now we're gonna come down and through and up and through, just like that. I'm just gonna make sure that tail is on the right hand side. All right, so again, I'm going to the next stitch, so down and through like this, and then up and through, just like that. And when you pull tight, it should look pretty nice. So just keep doing this stitch all the way around. Okay, so I have sewn almost all the way, and now I have about like a quarter sized hole here. So now I'm gonna stuff the head and the body. Okay, so we finished stuffing. So now I'm just going to finish up stitching. And just like before, we are going to pick up a stitch somewhere. So pull almost all the way through, but while we have a loop, we're gonna go back through with the needle like so. Pull it tight, and then just stick our needle in nearby, and then out the body somewhere else. Pull that through, pull a little bit harder, snip that off, and that end of yarn will be hidden within. So this is what we look like at this point. So now I'm going to attach the arms and the legs in the same way that I attached the ears and the tail. So I'm gonna do that, and I will see you back when I'm done with that. Okay, so I finished putting on the arms, the legs, and the tail, and he's sitting upright just like I was hoping. And I actually opted to not stuff the arms because I didn't want any of the stuffing to show through. You can see here where the stuffing has come through, and so I'm gonna go in and try to cover that up and cut these bits out just so it's not all over this little guy. So we're almost done. The last step is to add some final detailing, and I wanted to show a couple of different methods you could do this just in case you don't have any felting tools available where you are. So I went ahead and made a little O-ring out of the felt, and I was able to make it this circular because the kit that I used came with a little guide, and so all I did was put the felt in here and then just like stabbed it over and over again until it got to this place, and then I just kind of stretched out the center bit, and so this will go right here on his forehead, and you could just stab that all in. Another method, if you would prefer not to do that, is we're gonna just crochet using this same yellow, and we can just stitch that on to our little pieces here. So this is roughly the size O-ring that we want to make. So I'm using the same hook as earlier, and I am going to start with a magic ring, and we're gonna lock it in just like that. Now, I don't really know how big or how many stitches to add because I'm kind of winging it. So I'm just gonna pull the string just so it is roughly the same diameter, and I'm just gonna add single crochets into the circle. So this is 13 single crochets into the magic ring, and again all I did was just kind of pull that smaller string just to see roughly how big I wanted to make it, and all I'm going to do is join it right here into that first single crochet, which is just a yarn over pull through and then pull through. So now we have like a nice little ring, and I'm not gonna really pull this anymore. And I want this ring to be a little bit thicker, kind of like this piece here. So I'm just gonna add another row of single crochets all the way around. So I've just done the join, so I'm going to chain one, and that first single crochet is going to be in that same stitch where we just did that join. So that's one right there. So I'm just going to put single crochets all the way around and then join just like I did in the first round. So that's just going to be 13 single crochets. So that is 13 single crochets. And again, I am just going to join in that very first single crochet, not the chain, but the single crochet, just like that. And now I'm going to finish this off by leaving a long tail for sewing, and we're just going to pull it all the way through so that way it doesn't come undone, just like that. And I'm just going to massage it a little bit so it lays flat, just like that. And there you can see it's a little bit bigger, but you could maybe add fewer single crochets in the first round and maybe pull the smaller end of the string a little bit more. But you can see we can get the same effect without having access to needle felting. And honestly, I kind of like the look of this a little bit better. Also, the color being exact, like it's pretty close with the wool, but I think I like this better, so I'm gonna go ahead and stitch this on. Now, before I stitch this guy on, I am going to weave in this end just a little bit because I just want to make sure that it doesn't poke through the center or accidentally get tugged on. So I'm just gonna try to put it in any stitches that won't be visible from the front, and I'm going to do my very best to not pull on it as well, because I still want it to remain a circle. And I think that'll be good enough because, again, it doesn't need to be super tight. I just want it to not be visible from the front. Just like that. So to stitch this on, I'm gonna thread up my needle, and just like I did before, going with the stitches, we're gonna be working counterclockwise this time. Okay, so I'm gonna put it as centered on the head as possible, and I am just going to be stitching in between, or like under our single crochets from that last row. And again, if you don't like how thick this ring is, just remember you can just do, you know, that first row of single crochets, and then you won't have as thick of a ring, but I kind of like it. So that's what I'm going to go with. But I think the important part is just making sure that you don't pull too hard and making sure that it is centered. So now I'm gonna come up under this single crochet right there, just like so, and then down through this one. And then I'm just going to stitch where you will not see it at all, and just keep going all the way around in this method. So there he is with his little detailing on the front. And so the only thing we have to do next is add his little circles to the back of his feet and his arms. And we're gonna do that in pretty much the exact same way that I created this, is we're just gonna make a magic ring. Again, I am showing you that you can do it with felting, and then all you would have to do is just like stab it on there using your needle felting. But we're gonna move forward with just crocheting these little details. So here is Umbreon all finished up with all the cute little details. And as you can see, you really can make do with what you have. If you prefer doing crochet details, or if you want to do felting details, really it's up to you. But I'm very happy with the way that he turned out. So I'm super happy with the way that he came out. He is super adorable, and I'm very happy with the way that the details came out. So even though I painted these black safety eyes with red acrylic paint, I think that they really pop, and really other than the shine, you can't really tell that they're painted. And I think I'm super happy with the crochet detailing instead of the needle felting. I think after they're sewn on, they just look really, really nice. I think all around, this might be one of my favorite evolutions. I know we've only done 3 at this point, but I think this might be my favorite one up to this point. Well, I hope this video was helpful for you guys, and I also hope that you are willing to give this a try. Be sure to go check out the artist's website that I linked down below in the description. And if you enjoy this type of content, be sure to check out the other videos on my channel. And otherwise, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day or evening wherever you are, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye!